And we're live.
Hey, welcome back to the Den of
Hello.
Thieves podcast.
Hello, everyone.
Summer 2018, week 6 is in the books. 12 games under our belt, and we are sitting pretty at 8-4.
That's right. Tied at first.
Which is still a tie, but only a one-way tie, which I don't even know if it warrants saying a one-way tie, but we are still tied.
A vanilla tie, we'll call it.
Right. Standard tie.
Yeah, your everyday run-of-the-mill tie with Team Liquid, who, by the way, has the tiebreaker not over us. So
yeah, I was noticing
really
that.
Want to split hairs. Team Liquid is technically in first with the head-to-head record.
So they do use head-to-head because in the rankings, it used to just say like there was that large group. It was like a 6-way tie for first.
Yeah,
and it just said tie for first. So now we are officially in second, I guess.
Yeah, in a way. It is, it's probably like we saw in the World Cup where there was like 9 rules in order of how to break a tie, and they actually went to the 9th one in this, actually to the 8, I guess, because they didn't flip a coin. They decided things on disciplinary record, which is insane. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that. All we have to worry about right now is the head-to-head record, where Team Liquid currently has the advantage on us, but we have an opportunity to equal that up and move on to whatever the next tiebreaker rule is.
Yeah. Well, the only way we equal that one up is by beating them next Saturday. And if we do that, we're no longer tied. So that solves itself.
That's right. Assuming we win.
Well, if we don't win, they still have the head-to-head record on us. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, in the other game.
I was really hoping that they would use support CS as one of the tiebreakers.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens on that. But that's probably about as good as disciplinary record in a soccer game. So
about as relevant, maybe more relevant.
Yeah. Who knows? Anyway, since we haven't said it, this is Cole, and that is
Jordan.
And again, you're in the Den of Thieves now. So let's get this thing rolling and recap some of the action from this past weekend.
It was a good weekend. We went 2-0. If you hadn't picked that up.
It was a stressful weekend. Can we say that?
It was a stressful weekend. It was a long weekend. It was a grindy weekend. I think, going back to last week, I predicted a 2-0 weekend. Not to dwell on this, but you predicted 1-1. What we didn't predict is the nature of those wins. And I think we ought to start doing that now, because I think it's safe to say that every time we play clutch, there's a very good chance that it's going to be just a knockdown, drag out grinder.
That's right. As we know, it was a record for the split for longest game. And we held the record with clutch for the longest playoff game in the last split.
Yeah.
So I think we know kind of what happens when these two teams get together.
Yeah. So let's jump into that game. Do you have you want to run down the draft for us real quick?
Sure. So the way it shook out, we had Someday on Gangplank and on Graves, Ryu on Ariana, Cody Sun with Lucian, Aframu on Braum. On the side of clutch, we had Solo on Gnar, Moon took Trundle, Febvin on Syndra, Piglet, the almighty Piglet took Ezreal, and Vulcan took Tom Kench.
Yeah, so a couple of things worth mentioning. This is the same team, same name, but I think they had 3 different players, right? Is that right? Clutch really shook up their roster for this match.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than the clutch we are expecting to see.
Yeah, so I was refreshed to see. It doesn't matter who you put on that team. It's still going to be a 50-plus minute game.
Same dang game, man.
Which maybe goes to the coaching. Like, when you match up one strat against another, if they're very similar, you get a similar outcome. Yeah, so we even had Anda now. I mean, it's almost one entire team is new worth of people. We have 4 new players.
We've cycled a bunch of players out with the same result.
Yeah, so this was like a good crash course for them on the history of these 2 young organizations. And right before we started, I was mentioning to you, I think we do have a bit of a rivalry growing here. I think I've mentioned this before on the pod. Confirmed. Like, there's no way other than that to say it. Although I'll run this by you. Can you, and it's worth saying here, we're both Illinois fans growing up in Illinois. Can you have a rivalry with a team if you never beat that team? I'm just going to put that out there.
I since we're on the other side of that coin, yes. Yes, you can have a right. It's because I mean, think about a little brother, big brother kind of thing.
Yeah.
Little brother will never stop going at big brother. And how do I know? Because that's how I was as a little brother. It doesn't matter if you never win, you're always going to fight.
Yeah.
And that's what's important in a rivalry. And who knows, maybe we'll see this even out over time. This is year one of the organization.
Yeah.
This could end up being a thing. It could end up 100 Thieves fly swatting away Clutch Gaming. Who knows?
I mean, this was a very long game. It didn't, it felt close up to the point that we got Baron. And then it was like everything just fell into place after we got that first Baron, which took 20 minutes, not at the 20-minute mark. It took 20 minutes of dancing around the Baron for us to get it. But once we secured it, I think the game was decided, basically. Everything just kind of happened as it needed to. Which I think speaks to what we're learning about this team. We out macro teams in the LCS. And I think that you don't need to look a lot further than the first kind of our early record. And they talked about this a lot in the broadcast, but we are statistically, I think, the 7th weakest early game. And then mid and late game, we were the strongest. And you can get that through macro, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I had a note in my game notes about this. That it's like, I really have to eat my words, because early on in this split, I really felt like we had a good early game and we were opening strong, but definitely since Rift Rivals, that has not been the case.
Well, it's interesting too, because we've done a hard shift in strats, right? So basically every game, well, not every game, but most of our games I think all of our wins were funnel until last week, like the week before this one. So, does that speak to more of that strat and just that funnel isn't as strong early? Could be. But I feel like this week was unique in that I just didn't feel that confident after our first, opening 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like, we opened one game with a double kill in bot lane. Like, that was real. I think that was CLG, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Real shaky. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And I think this is the evolution we watch for now is can we figure out our early game? Because I think if we do, that it's going to be impossible to stop us. We're already sitting first.
Yeah. And it's interesting. The early game, I mean, this is how it kind of shook out in this game. Anda actually opened kind of aggressive, which when I looked at the pick bands, I thought that the team comps are going to force Anda to be an X factor. Mm-hmm. He would need to be aggressive to make things happen. And he started out that way. I mean, they tried to punish and invade by them with a gank, and it didn't work out. Our bot lane ended up getting stuck and pushed pretty badly. And after, that, and it wasn't a bad gank or anything. It wasn't a bad attempt. It was, it's always good to have pressure down there. But Anda kind of went quiet after that and made me really nervous. And so it was no surprise when, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of the conversation, but when Someday busted out and got the first blood, it's like, okay.
I thought that was a really cool play. This is the one where Anda was kind of, it looked, I mean, he'd say he baited it, I'm sure. It was hard to say. He got the Trundle to go in for him he was backing in the Trundle's jungle. And then it's like a half-second passes. He pops off with a collateral damage into the top lane from where he's standing in the jungle. It was a perfect play. Like, it was awesome. So again, I don't know if that was like I'm seeing flashes of stuff like that where I'm like, oh, that was super slick. Like, that was kind of a swagger play. Like, oh, you think you're getting an easy pickup here? Not so much.
Yeah.
And he got out. So yeah, I mean, I always like to see, I love watching Graves. I think probably just after we've seen Levi and what he can do. And I thought he did well. I don't have their numbers up here at the end.
He was 4-2-10, so he certainly did his job. He was a little quiet after that early moment, but he came back into it and he certainly made an impact.
Yep.
Ryu looked awesome.
Yeah,
I got to say again, Ryu looked great. I mean, he had good pressure in mid. He was foiling ganks with his stopwatch. Mm-hmm. Ryu just looks comfortable when you put him on these mages in mid.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think that's what we expect. I think what I've been glad to see is that he's comfortable playing in bot if we need him to. I don't know how much we'll see that again this split. Seems less likely now.
Probably not, but it was sure fun while it lasted.
Yeah, it was. But I think it speaks to his versatility overall, right? He can, like, he had no trouble shifting lanes, playing in bot. Like, he was just as much a playmaker there for sure. So just as a little context for this episode, I'm going off my campsite notes, which are a little bit different format. So if it seems like I'm scratching my head a little bit, because I was camping this weekend and I had to watch the stuff on my phone with like a little campfire notes. So
that's awesome. Yeah, we didn't explain that. That's, you know, we delayed by a day.
We're a day late.
For those of you who are new to this podcast, we typically go live at 8:30 Central on Sundays, but we're behind today. Campfires notwithstanding. So don't worry about your campfire notes, because I've got the almighty Google Docs going here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like sorry, I flipped my notes as I was saying that. Go ahead, go back to what you were gonna say.
Well, I was just gonna say, I thought that this game, and really the following game as well, they we're starting to see what could be the overall methodology for the team emerge, which is just to be patient, just to be really, really, really patient. I mean, we are playing slow, and I think last week I pointed to it being grit, that we watched the early games play out and it didn't go well for us at all.
Yeah.
And instead of kind of, letting that snowball, they just didn't make mistakes and stabilized everything else that was happening in the game. And because of that, they were able to find their moments to get back in. And it just, like, maybe it comes from all the experience that's on the team. I mean, Anda's a rookie, but we've got a lot of experience. And, maybe Aframu is just getting comfortable, not having to go out and make dramatic plays, but just to wait, survey what the other team is doing, and pick your spots. Like that, to me, that's kind of what we're seeing. Early games, feeling it out. Sometimes it goes well for us. Most of the time it doesn't. And then we're just going to kind of hang around. And we saw Cody Sun get a double kill from a really, really nice dive with the Lucian. Didn't let their bot lane out of it. He made sure that they were punished. And
it was there as backup if needed. Wasn't needed.
It didn't end up being needed, but the threat was there. We saw Ryu get a triple kill. I mean, in that fight, I guess Clutch came away with 2 in the end, but at least Ryu was taking care of business himself. But it was just interesting because you get to 19 minutes into the game and gold's even.
Yeah. And I think even like well into the game, we were only down 3K gold, which I feel like for this team is basically nothing. That's it's kind of just assumed, which we got to get away from that. We have to move on past that being something that I don't know if we're okay with it, but just that's assumed. One of the notes I had is that this was basically just the opposite of last week's game in a lot of ways, I felt. We talked about last week how...
You're talking about the FlyQuest game?
It was one of the two where we were just unkillable. So many team fights, we disengaged, we walked away with 5 people up. I mean, this one just felt sloppier. I don't know if that's the right word necessarily. Maybe it was just bloodier. That's probably a better word. It was bloodier in that almost every fight there was a trade of at least 1 life, right? So I don't think we 3-0 or 4-0 to them in any fight, maybe until the very end. But so there's tenacity in that too, right? Like that's a different kind of grit. It's even when the plays don't go your way, even when the team fight isn't perfect, how do you make sure that you're not giving up an objective? There were a couple of really good moments there where we got counter engaged on as we were going for an objective, and we backed off just enough to basically survive and keep fighting, even though we might have lost a person. It would have been much easier, I think, and some other teams might have just kind of, like broken and ran to try to get out. But, it was, at the end of it, we got the W. It was a tough game. Like, I'm sure they're all exhausted, 57 minutes, but
I saw Cody like doing this with his hand, like he was
That,
shooting
man.
it out like right after the win. Yeah, I mean, but here's the question. I mean, are we seeing a case where we're playing not to lose instead of playing to win? Like it's the classic conundrum. And
Yeah.
if we're playing a better opponent, are we going to pay for that? Like is Team Liquid going to let us get away with that, or are they just going to snowball it?
I think you're right. I don't think they do let us get away with it. If we look forward to next week, I think that's going to be if we're hoping to win next week, we have to start stronger at the start of the game. Because if we don't, they're going to run with that lead and not look back if they're at their best too. But we know what Liquid can do. We just need to look back to finals last year or last split to see how they can take. And I think that was one of the things we ran into last split is they didn't let us back into games, you know, and it was 0-3 and it wasn't that close. And I think they just found a really good way to punish us for starting slow.
Yeah.
So we've got to get better at that.
We do. And I mean, while on one hand, I'm thrilled that we have that confidence and that patience and the ability to pick our spots. I agree. I think when we get put up against the toughest of the tough competition, even in NA, like let alone Worlds,
right?
We're going to have to be more assertive. And again, I'm glad we have that in our back pocket. I'm glad we have the patience. I'm glad we can prevent ourselves from making mistakes. But we're definitely going to need to play with a little more urgency, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I fully agree. And I'd say, without getting too far into the strats of other teams and the play styles of other regions, because this is an NALCS pod, but I think to some degree, if our ambitions are to make it to Worlds and to win, right? Like when I think of this team, I don't think of this as a team that's going to be happy if we get first place and we get the championship in NA. Like that is an awesome milestone and that's a great accomplishment. But I think as soon as we do that, the focus shifts to Worlds and what happens next, which I think what you want to have. Like I think there are teams in NALCS who would look at it and say, hey, as a consolation prize, right? We get to also, or consolation is not right, but the secondary bonus here is that we get to go to Worlds. That's amazing. But I think for us, it flips right away to how are we going to compete on the world stage? And from the very little we've watched, because we both got into it this season, we have recognized, both of us, that other teams in the world do not let you get away with mistakes at all. Like they will punish you so hard for even dropping one kill in bot lane. Like I'm thinking of Kingzone games that I've watched where they get one pick in bot.
Kingzone was like that every time.
Yeah, they get one pick and then the game just spirals out of control. So if this remains our calling card, we will find very limited success on the world stage. And that's why I think we really need to not so that we can really take the next step and kind of get past the liquids. But I think as the organization evolves, if we hope to compete there, we've got to get better at that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, I would love to, we don't have a stats department here at the Den of Thieves podcast, but I would be interested to see how
any interns interested.
Right. I would be interested to see how our game lengths, average game lengths shake out, because I would bet that we are on the high side of things. Not only, as a region, but 100 Thieves specifically, I would guess. Our games move a little slow, and at times I feel like I'm nodding off a little bit during these games because we are playing it so safe, and again, we got the result here, and we had some really great looking team fights where we didn't panic and we were able to extend the team fights and then turn them and make them pay. It's that stuff is great. I just hope that we're able to pick up the pace. I mean, it had me questioning a little bit in my mind. It's like, are we having shot calling issues, like not issues, but hesitancy? Are we hesitating on our shot calling, or are we just being super patient? There's a fine line there. And I guess we can and should trust Aframu to ride that line for now. And we'll be sensitive about it going forward.
I think I still fall on that side of the line. I would have a hard time saying that there were issues that I could pick out with shot calling since we got the game. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think you could look at the game and say the right calls were made because the right result was achieved. So even if it's, well, that was a very patient or slow or plodding play style, maybe there was an awareness that we would outscale them, and these are just generic examples, or that if we keep vision control and the river will eventually swing around here. Like I think those are all legitimate strategies too, that winning a team fight decisively is one way to get what you need to have happen. And grinding it out is another one. And, I think probably tweeted out that he was also falling asleep, but so there's no debate here that was a super exciting classic game. But it was a win.
It was a win. And, that brings us to, as you were, I believe, pointing out, in the regular season, we're 4-0 now against Clutch, and with the playoff win from last split as well.
They did pick 2 games off us, but the series was a win.
But the series was a win. So, we do have that. We're their big brother for right now. And
yes, we are.
I think that's gonna stay that way for a little while. I have one final question.
Yes.
About this game, and then we can move on. So, if you had to pick your MVP for the entire game, would you pick, say, would it be Cody's son? Would it be Anda? Or would it be the bot lane turret tier 1?
I was not expecting that.
We had the most invincible turret ever. I know this is serious business to talk about these games, but it would be a shame to not mention whatever they did to buff that turret up, man. I don't know what build was going on with that turret.
But we got to get that. That's got to make it into pro builds for sure.
Yeah, that may be something we picked up from LCK. I don't know.
The funny thing is, it speaks to really good lane management, because I swear the thing that eventually knocked it down was one melee hit. It just goes to show you how well
the little caster took it down.
He felt good. He felt good about himself that day.
Yeah.
A serious response to that. I think Ryu is MVP, and I know that'll bring a smile to your face. He was so his poke was. With him on Zoe, you cannot play that game if you don't have somebody who is so dangerous from basically the entire screen length away. It made it so hard for them to engage. So hats off to Ryu. I think he played it amazingly well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would give it to him over Cody's son, actually. I thought, looking at the stat lines is a little misleading. Cody's son was 6-1 and 9. Ryu was 4-2 and 7. But I just felt like Cody's son was able to force things when they moved a little too slowly. And but it's a close thing. It's hard not to give it to that bot turret though. So let's that wraps up the what we are calling the Red and Black Rivalry, right? The Red and Black Rivalry.
We'll go with that. If you've got different ideas, tweet at us.
Yes, if you are, you're definitely more creative and inspired than we are. Send those tweets off. But
until we hear otherwise, that's what it'll be. Unfortunately, we may not have another installment of the Red and Black Rivalry until spring split of 2019. At this rate, Clutch, got to make the playoffs, guys. If you want to try again.
Sick burn. All right. Well, that brings us to Game 2 versus CLG. We have the draft shaking out someday on Darius and on Talia, which was a new spicy thing. Ryu on Zoe. Hooray. Cody's son on
Wait, so I got my Ryu games mixed up. Oh, he was in Oriana. So just take what I said about MVP and flip it to this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. He played great in game 1 too. But so Cody's son on Zaya, Aframu on Rakan, and then on the other side, Darshan took Mundo, big scary Mundo, who didn't end up being so big and scary this time. Rainover on the Kindred, Huhi on Galio, Stixay on Callista, and Biofrost with Morgana, aka the assist god.
Morgana.
So how'd you feel about that draft?
They call it in broadcast. That is a crazy draft. Like
we targeted the mess out of Stixay.
We did, but the amount of picks they let us get through was kind of surprising. Given how many they did, I was very surprised how the game went. But you look at that draft and you're like, what happened? How did this? Because those are all top tier picks. Like
we got the Rakan like right off the bat, which can go to either Afro or Anda.
Yeah, and my thoughts on Zoe.
Yeah, we got
Given
Zoe,
those.
and we got Zoe in the second half of pick bands. Like Zaya, Cody Stone was able to lock in Zaya, and Talia I thought was really interesting, and that pick came third. So we locked in Talia before we went for that Zoe.
Well, I mean, think back to first part of the split. Talia was a ban every game. She was, I think she was broken in the jungle. Basically, she was just too strong. I think they brought in some nerfs on her, but yeah, like that. She's still super, super problematic for teams, and you can see why. He had so much roaming potential. Made a lot of plays off that Talia too.
But yeah, obviously we didn't want to have Stixay get his way, and honestly, he still had a good game on the Callista.
Yeah,
he insta locked Callista, so he was ready for for what happened.
Yeah.
And wow, this one did not start well.
No, I feel like this was the poster game of like what can go wrong, or like the bad start for a Thieves team, which again was surprising because like pick wise, I think we were really well set up. I mean, I guess the Callista is like that's her game, is to just be super aggressive in lane, but Zyra Khan is definitely a comfort pick for us, and those are two champions who both Cody and Afro know how to play together very well. So yeah, it's kind of surprise. And I think that this is the game where I feel like Anda did have a little bit of a like kind of a slow start. Just a couple of misplays, like finding himself in places he shouldn't be, face checked a bush. He was trying to steal a blue, like giving up kills that way.
Yeah, he got burnt by Rainover like right away.
Yeah, and it almost ended up with Ryu getting killed too.
Yeah, it was super close.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I had to look at it and say like what could we do differently, I think there were just some miscues and misplays by Anda. And I think this is a game he'll want to watch the tape on very closely and just figure out what happened.
I think he did some nice things too, though. I mean,
but just the beginning, more specifically.
Yeah, he got Rainover back while Rainover was trying to set up a gank on bot.
Oh yeah, he melted him.
We saw a couple good Weaver's walls come out from him,
yeah.
which were nice in helping us take objectives and the like. After I don't know. I'll talk about this here in a minute, but I thought Anda is more than pulling his weight, and I'm happy with him. I do agree he made some mistakes. He made some mistakes that he shouldn't have, like not just mistakes, but mistakes that you should know better about.
Right.
But
it just seemed like momentary lapses in focus. Right.
And after the marathon game the day before, you're probably due for some of that. But what we were staring down the barrel of is a Stixay at 3-0-0 at 5 minutes. 5 minutes into the game, after you targeted him in the draft.
Yeah.
So again, this speaks to the amount of grit that the team has to not let that spiral out of control, because we were looking unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that is one way to put it for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, did we let the last game go without talking about how it ended, right?
Oh, yeah. I suppose we did.
So quick shout out to Someday. He got a quiet segment on us in that last one.
That's right. That's probably the least we've talked about Someday in a single game.
Which I think is a mistake on our part, but we got sidetracked a little bit. Real quickly, pretty sweet way to end the game, just walking into their base and taking the Nexus on your own. Why not? If it works, go for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of a lot going on bot, during that play's development. And so
yeah, there was a lot going on.
He just had enough, and we know he's prone to having enough. And I just want to win this game, and I can, so I will. So.
That's a good way to put it. He's prone to having enough at some point in a match, and he just decides, all right, it's Someday time.
Yeah, so shout out Someday. Thanks again, man.
Yes, thank you.
I hope you're not offended by the fact that we ceased talking about you for 5 minutes.
He'll probably give us a pass. I think that game, who knows how long that game would have been if he didn't just end it. But either way, So yeah, this one I felt like definitely the CLG game. I mean, huge to come back from that dreadful start. We're down 3K, a turret at 17 minutes, 4 to 8 kills.
We looked anemic too. Like it looked like our rotations weren't there. There's a weird I mean they were kind of doing some unusual things. Like they sent 4 bot at one point.
Yeah.
Which you do not typically see, especially in the early game. And there were other times where we weren't even rotating. We let them take our mid tier 1 uncontested.
Yeah.
We didn't even do anything about it when they went straight up and got Shelly, took Rift Herald, and they looked like they had an agenda for this game and they knew exactly what to do at every minute.
Yep.
And that they were, just pursuing it and one thing after another. And we just looked like we were yawning and a little sleepy. And I just, again, I don't know what we're doing to pull these things out.
Well, and this is, I think, where you could look at it and just say that the macro is on point. I mean, at one point,
but is it if we're missing rotations? Is it if we're, if we're dropping objectives uncontested?
Well,
we're really good at cost benefit analysis in the game, and that we just know it's not going to be worth it. Like,
I think some of those, there's an acknowledgement or an acceptance that objective is gone, right? And that so the way I think about it is when people, especially when picks get made, there are going to be situations where you just can't defend, and the best play is to concede while trying to minimize your losses. And so I think macro looks different in every game for us, in that sometimes macro means that we don't give an inch and we finish without losing a single objective. And other times we overcome an early deficit that would for other teams be insurmountable, and come back. And I think a good illustration of that is that it was 8 kills for us, 9 kills to them. So they were still 1 kill ahead of us. I mean, we didn't turn this into just a bloodbath, but we had 2 of their inhibs down, right? So we found a way to just kind of keep squeezing, keep applying the pressure, and get to the point where their base was completely broken. Like,
yeah, well, let's back up a little bit. I mean, because what was the play that turned it? Or was there a play?
We got a Baron.
To me, that team fight that we had mid, where it might have been a 4v4, it might have been 5v5, where we were losing a team fight, and someday kind of split off, flanked a little bit, and he took major damage, and then he got 3 people cut down. They went to pursue him, and then he hit a stopwatch, and that single stopwatch turned the whole fight for us.
Yeah, he was. And then I think during that time we got it. I think we had 2 picks. It was kind of off to the left side of our mid lane,
right? Because we separate. Someday pulled the team away, and he took,
and he ended up dying shortly after that because they dropped the Galio on him. But they had invested so much resources into him that the rest of the team was able to clean up.
Yeah, we took 3 for 1, and that's what earned us that Baron.
Yeah.
So, to me, that was really the play that turned it. And so there's our making up to someday for not talking about it last time. To me,
giving him the salute for what might have otherwise just looked like inting into a group of people in a team fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was calculated, and he knew what the Darius kit could do in terms of getting people to jump onto him. And he used the stopwatch in a smart way, and really was the start of the rally for us. And that, again, I may have mentioned this last week, but I would be so interested to be in those comms and just hear what the tone is of the team right before that moment. What things are happening. Is probably what he preaches about your tone of communication when you're losing. Is that, being listened to? Are they sitting there? No, we got this. We got this. We got this.
I think this is a great transition point to kind of the end of this game, where probably gives an interview, and then the heist. And there's some interviews that probably's done lately that I think would be fun to talk about a little bit. But if you get a chance, and anybody listening gets a chance, go back and watch the highlight reel on this one, because they'll loop in comms from game for those highlights. So I always go back and listen. It's kind of fun. Everybody's super calm. our team is incredibly calm, and I think
is it a calm confidence or is it a calm and shock?
No, it's just like I think it's a calm confidence. Sort of reads as to me. And you know, even like the plays where I'm sweating, right? And I'm like, oh, this crap. They got Afro. They got a pick on Afro, or you know, Afro. Like, and that this weekend there were a lot of those, like I said earlier, where it wasn't a super clean fight that we made it out of in 5 pieces, 5 whole pieces. But they just kept it calm. Like in one fight, Afro goes, he goes, I'm like he goes something like, I'm dying, and then he just walks into them.
I'm dying.
Yeah, and he says it like that. I'm dying. And then, but that was another one of those fights where I think they ended up getting another pick after that. Somebody else tried to chase too hard or something. So, and that fight that you were talking about with Someday, they have that one calmed up. And again, I mean, it's kind of fun to watch because you get a sense for just exactly how everything is unfolding so quickly that at different points in the fight, they're just yelling the name of different people who are kind of out of position. And it's like, focus on this person, focus on this person. And I think it may have been Afro who says to Someday, like, come back. And then Afro just like, or Someday walks in and he's like, unless you're going to go in.
Oh,
but to your point, like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, that is an example of individual play that made a huge difference.
It did. And I think from that moment on, we just had all around nice team fighting. We actually took a second Baron a little bit later, you know, once that second inhib went down, and it was just we aced them off of, and that was a really, really nice team fight.
That was an uncontested Baron, which, I mean, that speaks to the level of macro control you've got. If they can't even come over and pretend like they're going to contest it, then they're in trouble, right? I think they're cleaning out their base, or they're just trying to get vision back or something. So great game. Again, I mean, your topic from last week, I think, is the topic for this week too. And then that's why I thought that Prawley's interview afterwards was so interesting, because the first thing he says is, we've been practicing resiliency, right? So I don't know exactly how you practice that, and I would be interested to hear more about what drills they're doing, but clearly it's working. And he made a distinction that I thought was very interesting. He said, we're practicing fighting back and not just stalling the game, which it's such a small distinction. But I feel like it does characterize well what we've done. And I think in games like Clutch, if you're just stalling, you don't get the Baron take, right? You aren't the team who gets the Baron, who eventually tips things in their favor. Like, stalling just means that we played a 50-minute game, and you know, we put up several good fights that they ultimately won just by the slimmest margin. But that wasn't it at all. We got the best of those fights, and we came away with it.
Yeah, and maybe that is just the small difference. And you know, I was talking about the line between being patient and being indecisive, and you know, maybe that is the definition of the line.
Yeah, I think another way that you can look at it is, are we leaving these fights with, even if it's just ever so slightly, is it tipped in our favor, right? Or are we on our back foot constantly? So, and I think for us, for this weekend, it was, we were making progress, continuing to make progress. And then another thing that he said that I thought was interesting, he said, we've been practicing our way out of funnel, which we talked about previously. So I was glad to hear that he said, as soon as we got funnel down, basically started practicing it, because we knew that Riot didn't like it, and that they were practicing standard at the same time. And I don't know if this is my note or his note, but I've got here, best mid to late team in league. I think that was the analysis desk, the analyst desk. Actually, that's what that was.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't think there's much debate on that. I mean, certainly nobody on the desk said, I'm not sure about that. So we just got to unlock the riddle to early game, and then I think we're going to be in great shape.
And that should, I mean, we've got kind of like a tough schedule for the rest of the split to be able to do this. So hopefully the scrims will afford them the opportunity to really focus on that, sort it out, and playing standard, and you know, we'll just hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever they can do to just really try to get that early game locked in, you know, in a way, I think this liquid game is coming at the perfect time because we've had 4 games now where that's been kind of our challenge. And so we'll know now next week if we're able to do it.
Yep. And hopefully we don't become the little brother 2 team liquid.
Gosh. Yeah. We have to at least put up a fight. Like take a couple games.
Yeah. I just want to point out one more thing as we're talking about the big picture before we move on to talking about the heist. The record of the team since the Medios trade. We are 4-2. And that one of those 2 was an insane, just unbelievably crazy, unlucky base race.
Yeah.
So in my mind, we're basically 5-1 since losing an absolute veteran, well-loved LCS player.
And remind me who our other losses to.
The other loss was to Golden Guardians.
What?
Yeah. So that, and we got rolled in that one. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I think I've
lie.
erased that one from my memory.
Yeah, that was a Mickey game. So.
Oh, that was Mickey game. Yeah.
Yeah, Anda is doing great for us.
Yes.
It would be disingenuous if anyone said he didn't exceed expectations.
For sure.
He has had maybe one not good game. He's had a couple of just decent games, and then the rest have been pretty good.
Yeah.
And to be doing that as a rookie is worthy of praise. So
yeah,
very happy to see how that trade has worked out. And to me, it's still, again, that's only 3 weekends since the trade was made. So it's not like, we have the full picture yet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you have to be happy about that. And you have to feel like the team really had to make a tough decision, but really tried to make the right one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that. 100%. And even when I talk about him needing to watch the tape and review how the weekend went, I think it is just that continuing puzzle for us of how do we crack the code of this early game? And I think for him, that's his part of it, right? It's how do I not make either over aggressive plays and get caught or something like that? But
it's a really good point. He probably will be key into how that, specific moment and that specific challenge in the game plays out for us. So if that's our only weakness, is that our rookie jungler who's new to the team is not quite the best in the early game, man.
Yeah.
That's
very workable. Position. Right.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the heist. Let's
do it.
The heist. My first 10 notes are: some days Jackson was fun to watch.
I think I wrote, I could watch that on replay forever.
Yeah. Holy cow. What a play. And I am so glad that they took this opportunity of the heist to kind of, it's like a mini highlight reel.
Yeah.
For some of his crazier plays that got great caster reactions and everything. It's just so much fun to watch. And that's so crucial to league as a whole, to being an esport, is to just have those moments that are thrilling to watch and that really bond you with a player. And it's just crazy how much of that there's been for Someday in this split.
It is this is basically Someday the star, the NA star has arrived, and it's cool to be along for that ride because it's happening in real time. And just even this weekend with 2 games that one was kind of a snooze fest, the other one was, definitely not our best game. He finished 1, right? It's even those games where it's is it, it's hard to be the MVP on a team that's just kind of making it through games, but he still does it. He plays with a ton of swagger and he makes plays that other people don't and can't.
Yeah.
So
he finished 1 game and he turned the other one completely.
Yeah.
Man.
So yeah, I agree. I thought the topic of this heist was very interesting. And And the question, one of the questions I had as I was watching it is, I feel like he's kind of emerging as our star. Like, I think he is an incredibly likable personality, so that he checks that box on like esports superstar, right? Can you fit that build or fit the build,
The mold.
fit the mold? And he's also amazingly talented. So I think one of the things that I'm interested to see is, can we, like, is he our franchise player? Like, can we kind of build a team around him?
Well, that is the big question. He is as from what I understand, I think he's our highest paid player.
Mm-hmm.
He is the only player that's only on contract for 1 year. So his contract's up in November of this year, whereas everybody else is on through November of next year.
Okay.
There also been some, comments made about how he really misses Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, maybe it's good for us selfish fans to have so much positive attention on him right now, because that can potentially make a difference in the equation if he's really having fun being here. And I honestly, I don't have enough knowledge of the salaries over in like LCK or LPL, but I imagine we overpay.
Probably,
I imagine to be competitive in NA, we overpay our players, especially our imports. And so, that's all obviously a huge factor. For right now, he's got Ryu with him that he can kind of, have that camaraderie with. So hopefully, we can get another contract signed or whatever. I don't know what the team move is going to be. It's an expensive contract. It's a very expensive contract.
There are a couple of things this brings to mind. One is, again, without going too far into LCK, there are a number of traditionally strong Korean teams that are really struggling right now, like falling apart, struggling. Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you they will come calling after Sunday's performances this year. So once that contract ends, I think we should expect for, and probably before it ends, we should expect for people to approach him with offers. And these wouldn't be like, hey, if you want to come back, this, we could maybe find a spot for you. It'd be like, we could build a team around you. Because I think he's that good. I do. I definitely think he could start in some LCK rosters. The other thing it brings to mind is this whole notion of building a team around somebody is such an interesting thing in League, because the careers are so short. I mean, I feel like people rise and fall so quickly, and what's good today is not good tomorrow, and maybe
with the changing meta and the patches
so there, it's like you look at traditional sports and you can franchise tag people and football, and you can depend on LeBron James being somebody you can literally build a team around. If you have him on your roster, you can make a deep push into the playoffs. Pretty much an A team in the league. He's that good, and he's dependably that reliable, like to deliver results. So it is interesting, and I just feel like the compressed duration of league professional careers, as well as all the different factors in there. I don't know how viable that like an approach to building up a team that is.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I mean, you have your stars and you have your people who are going to have longer careers. I mean, Faker is Faker, right? But there are only
this year.
Well, that's
he's getting subbed.
But he's been at the top for a long time.
Which, like 3 years, I'd say 3 or 4 years. I might be off on that, but even
probably
that
undisputed top, maybe 3 years.
Like even our sense of that is kind of weird, right?
Yeah, that is true. So that is a good point. But my point is, you're going to have a handful of those kind of players. You're going to have Faker, you're going to have Uzi, you're going to have some people to point to that are always going to be good, and they'll be able to sustain careers that are on a longer amount of time than the rest of us.
Which is true for LeBron too. Like, he is not the norm.
Yeah, exactly. As far as, building teams around those players, well, it would be foolish to not maximize an asset while you have it. If our whole point is that this asset is going to be valuable for a short amount of time, then you better do everything in your power to maximize it. So I think it makes total sense to to build around a player in the moment. And, you know, that may not be an easy thing to do. You're going to have to move fast. You're going to have to make some split second decisions, and some hard decisions as well, about things that you can't do. But I would just say there's a very small amount of room at the top for the entire world.
Right.
I mean, think of how the LCS as a whole views NA.
Right. You know, MLS basically is what I think of in my mind.
Right. It's basically irrelevant to fans of LPL, LCK. So, and I have to make a difference, a huge impact on the world stage. That's really the only answer.
I have a similar desire to see NALCS become as relevant in the world stage as I do for
MLS.
and MLS isn't even fair. Really, when I think of American, it's the USA squad, right? US men's national.
Sure. Yep.
But that's, you know, so, but you know what I mean? It's just like, it sucks to be looked at as like, you guys are quaint.
Yeah.
A quaint league who you know, you show up and you try, we'll give you that.
Yeah. Well, it sucks, but it's the reality until something changes, which is, you know, I think, you know, bring this full circle. I think that's kind of the point that we're making here. I mean, think of what Someday keeps saying matters to him. He wants to be an MVP.
Yep.
And he wants to do well at Worlds. Like, those are the two things that he really cares about. He's not satisfied with like a first place regular season finish in NA.
Yeah, that wasn't one of the two things he mentioned as wanting to get.
Right. So he is out to make an impact on the world stage, which, you know, that's the only way we're going to shake the stigma of being NA.
Yeah.
So that's a tall order.
To be fair, like, there are teams who have made runs at Worlds, and TSM and Cloud9, like, they go and they perform. But overall, NA is not looked on as being a legit competitor. It's my sense. And I think that's shared pretty broadly. There are a bunch of other stuff, and we're kind of up on time, but if you want to, I'd like to just kind of talk more about the game in general. And kind of, I think, the way this team fits into it, and the way we understand how the team is structured, and kind of the overall mentality of the team, unless there's anything else you want to hit.
No, go for it.
So a couple of things that jumped out to me from the heist is, and we've alluded to this, we kind of put one toe into the water of this in a previous pod, but just the way that these players approach the game, there's no rest, there are no days off. They go so hard, and they all live together, and they live with their coach. It's kind of like, you know, I guess what I'm wondering is the way that this thing is built, make it so that if you want to be the best, you have to burn bright and burn short, right? Like, is the career as short as it is because that's what you have to do if you want to make it to the top?
I'm sure that's a massive contributing factor. It would be, you know, be pretty wild to claim that didn't have a significant impact on the longevity of people's careers, but I think that's not the only thing. I think there probably is just something to your mind being a little quicker when you're, you know, in your early 20s than in your late 20s, you know?
Yeah.
As we know all too well, not to tell on ourselves. But yeah, I think there's a always grinding kind of mentality that is a little bit detrimental. And actually, interestingly enough, this is a big topic in NBA right now. Is there's been, you know, the kind of the more forward thinking teams in the NBA, like the Warriors, they're starting to really do sleep studies and look into how, you know, how much rest these players are getting, quality of sleep, and how that affects their performance. And they're showing that it really does, you know, create some problems when these players are working too hard and they're not sleeping, and, you know, all that stuff. Obviously, you know, we've talked about this before. There's a physical barricade for, you know, people who are in traditional sports where your body literally cannot
continue
to function or whatever, which, you know, isn't so much of an issue. But I think the temptation of that is what's the problem. And you're in this pressurized situation where, you want to look in front of your teammates like you're playing all the time, like you're grinding solo queue or whatever, when you're not doing your scrims and not watching replays and stuff like that. It's a lot. And I do think, that's why there's so much early burnout.
And that is a really interesting thing that I'd thought of that in the pressure of solo queue. And, when they benched some of the C9 players earlier, the owners were talking about how they didn't seem committed. They weren't, climbing the solo queue ranks. Like it wasn't an implication that you need to be climbing solo queue. That's just an explicit expectation. Like when you're not scrimming, you're playing solo queue, you're getting better, you're climbing. I mean,
when you're living in the same house and you can see when people are doing that and when they're not.
Yeah. Or just like look at their game count, right? How many games have you played? Sure. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's this weird, like you think about traditional sports, if somebody's hitting the gym, okay, maybe they'll post on social media or something and demonstrate how dedicated they are. But I can go and look at how many games you've played this week, and how much you're practicing, right? Like if I cared, but there is this kind of marriage of social media with the sport, which is kind of insidious in my mind. It makes it so that there is an expectation that you're not turning off and that you're not stepping away, and that anytime you're not spending dedicated to this craft is time wasted.
Right. And especially because that's public facing as well. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone can look at what these players are doing in the match histories and stuff. Whereas, I don't have my LeBron tracker device telling me when he's entering into the gym or not,
Right. Sometimes he posts when he's in the gym.
Yeah. He'll do a bald, like rubbing his head, lifting weights video or whatever. But, I think that's a huge element of it too. Like you're under the spotlight, and think about what these guys are doing when they're not, when they're not with the team, is they're basically streaming.
Yeah. Right.
So constant under pressure. And stuff.
And so I do hope that as the game evolves and the sport evolves, that teams do similar to what Golden State's doing is, and this is unrelated to esports, but I listened to a podcast with a sleep expert, and he talks about the importance of getting sleep to actually, like sleeping is a huge part of actually becoming more skilled, right? Like something happens when you go to sleep, and that it resets this. I wish I would have known that like way back in my school days, but so it's there. Like the science is there to back it up. And the other thing I thought about too is, when you get into your late 20s, you start thinking about what the rest of your life is going to be outside of what it is you've been doing up to this point in your life. So for a lot of people, that's, kind of holding down so-so jobs, going to school. Like I think it's a natural occurrence, right? Where you start to look beyond whatever it is you've been doing up to this point in your life. I've got to imagine that for some league pros, it's like if I scrim 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and I hit solo queue 3 or 4 hours a day, and that doesn't leave much time for anything else. And then I stream on Twitch, like if you want to have a life outside of league, which eventually you will need to have, you're going to have to build, if you want players to have a long career, you're going to have to build in a way for that to be possible. And right now, it seems like there are a lot of barriers to that being something you can easily balance.
Yeah. And perhaps there needs to be, a way for teams to provide these players with a runway after their playing career is over, whether that's being, analysts for the teams or, assistant coaching or coaching academy or something like that. Like, I'm sure that there are ways that teams can look into it. I mean, maybe you're just a streamer, maybe you're still on staff with the team, but as a streamer.
Which
who knows?
People do that too.
Right. Yeah. We're just going to have to see how these things play out.
And I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody. Like it could be that this is the dream and that everybody is super happy doing it. It just seems like a lot of stress. And
I think what you're worried, you want someday to have a girlfriend, don't you?
I mean, if you had a girlfriend here, maybe he'd consider staying.
All right, 100 Thieves, get on that. Find a girlfriend for someday. Make sure he stays.
They wouldn't have to try hard. That would be an easy one.
Well, anything else that stood out to you from content this week?
Oh, I did want to mention just really quickly, and we don't have to get into it in a big way, but I think anybody who had a very severe negative reaction to the way we handled the Meteos trade, I just ask that you do a little bit of research and read into Equifox and their trades. So now they are the second team to make some moves in conjunction with Cloud9. But as part of that, they dropped 3 players who were basically locked out of the league because I think it was like 6
hours. Yeah, 6 hours before the roster lock.
So you might feel like BDOS didn't land in the best spot, right? FlyQuest, who is now in 3rd place, I think. So think about that. But at least he still has a job, right? Those guys got done pretty rough.
Yeah, and that I'm surprised that what it sounds like. It sounds like guaranteed contracts are not the usual thing going on here. So whoever is helping these players, if for those of them who have agents, these agents I think have a responsibility to really factor that into these discussions, and maybe there's a team power dynamic where they don't feel like they can get the team to budge on guaranteed contracts or partial guaranteed contracts, but holy cow, that's kind of a scary thing to have happen. So
yeah, I mean and next split doesn't start for a long time. That's a long ways away.
Yeah,
and if you didn't have a house, like if you were living in a team house,
right? Yeah, there's another thing, and it's not to say Equifox is not within their rights to do that.
Yeah, totally.
If that's what the contract is, then they're within their rights. So
and there's no indication that they have stepped outside the contract, so it must mean that they were within their rights.
But again, that's the situation where we do not have the internal knowledge on. No. So don't.
But what we do know is that Meteos could have landed in a worse spot, as exemplified in these recent trades.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So. All right.
Other news, merch was being shipped out. So people started getting their hoodies this week. We were not among the lucky souls who did. However, I did get a shipping notice yesterday, so I expect that we'll have a hoodie here to do a review on the pod for next week. And I'm very excited about it based off of some of the feedback that I'm seeing online. People are pretty impressed with the design, impressed with the quality. So
nice.
My hopes are high.
Let's see what we get. So we'll do this. Will be the first unboxing I've ever taken part in. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. We do you want to talk about next week?
Yes, we should.
Predictions here, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, next week is kind of a spooky one. So we talked about the game with Liquid, of course. They're tied with us, 8-4. They had a 2-0 weekend this week. They beat Golden Guardians and they beat Clutch.
And did you happen to see how those wins were? I mean, I didn't get to watch the action this week, so
I think I watched the highlights, but it all blurs together for me. So I couldn't tell you how decisively they did it. I think the game against Golden Guardians was a bit close, and that I think Golden Guardians came out hot but couldn't hold on for the win. I could be completely off.
I'm sure people do not need to be reminded that Golden Guardians have been surging.
Yes.
So
they are surging, but a falter this weekend where they went 0-2, losing to Liquid, as we said, and Optic.
Which is a tough one.
That's a tough one. I think, they're kind of the in my mind, they're in that same tier as Optic. Like, if you want to get into playoffs, you have to beat Optic if you're Golden Guardians. So they're 5-7 right now. They're one game out of last, which goes to show you there's still a lot of parity in the league. I think Clutch is last now, actually.
It really tanks you, huh?
It does. And that's why this is kind of a spooky one. Liquid is always a challenge, and Golden Guardians for us is kind of our boogeyman team.
Well, maybe we just focus all our bans on Mickey. Neutralize the threat. Don't let him have Talon, and
don't let him have Talon. Don't let him have Zoe. Can we please not?
Can we not let him play? Is there a way to target him outside? No, that is not okay.
Can we ban Mickey?
We're gonna lock in Mickey ban first.
Yeah, he's an auto ban.
And Mickey.
Hey,
Okay.
on the topic of Guardians, they do have Deftly as well, who I don't know how much you've seen, but I listened to a little bit of Hotline League this weekend. I didn't know this. He's got like top of the league stats for bot lane.
Yeah,
But he's no joke either. It's a new look Golden Guardians, and we got to be careful.
well,
Prediction.
yeah, I was gonna say that said. So I'm gonna say that we get beat up by Big Brother again. I think we're gonna drop the game to Liquid.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of the way we lost against Golden Guardians, like, I mean, again, if you remember, we got rolled, but it was kind of like, for some reason, it didn't really seem that impactful.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that is, and maybe that's just how they treated it on the heist, where they kind of glossed over that really, really bad loss. But it just didn't seem to get the team down, and so I'm gonna say I think we're gonna go 1-1. I think we'll drop to Liquid, but able to pull out the win against Golden Guardians. We'll atone for our past mistakes and focus our bands and trust Cody's son to put up a good fight.
I was going to say the exact same thing, but since I'll say we're actually going to go 2-0. I'll call another 2-0 weekend.
Well, it worked last time, so thank you.
Yeah, right. I'll do what I can. I'm going to put it on a really good week of practice. And I think that we are going to focus on that early game and lock it up, and that'll be the difference. This is a Liquid team that's shown they are vulnerable too. So I think we'll take advantage of that.
Yeah. I will say that a good week of practice is a good thing to say, because I've kind of liked those Prolly interviews that he's been giving lately. Mm-hmm. It seems like he feels pretty empowered right now. It seems like he's in control of how they're approaching everything, and the players are giving him respect. I think that you're right. I think that Prolly can get this job done.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, and it's been a fun kind of split, in that we've spent time talking about the impact of a coach on an LCS roster, how much all these different topics, and we've gotten really quick returns. Like, I think we're seeing though the answers to those be revealed, if only a little bit at a time. But I think you don't need to look a lot further than the evolution of our play style and our strat pool over the course of this split alone, to know that probably is a big, important piece of this team right now. And I'm with you. I think that he will be able to, over the remainder of the split, work with them on things that will make us that much tougher, specifically looking at the early game.
Yeah, man. So I think this is a week of trust in Prolly, trust in 100 Thieves.
Trust in someday.
Trust in someday. Trust in Ryu, stop the hate.
I know. I'm proud to say I appreciate his play so much. I watch now and I'm just like, dang, that was good. Dang.
Yeah.
We're
gonna have trust, and you're gonna have an insane amount of trust as you cheer them on to a 2-0 weekend, and we can only hope. So
yeah, it'll be soul number 1 spot. Let's get it.
That's right. Let's get Liquid.
All right. Good week. Another 2-0 week in the books. Let's put it behind us and move on and get another one.
Yep. Just a reminder, please, whatever you're listening to, however you're listening to us right now, if you can give us a like or a comment or a review. We have the podcast on iTunes. It's on Google Music. It's on Stitcher, Player FM. It's on most of the major podcast outlets. Not quite Spotify yet, but hopefully that will be in the not too distant future. We're also on YouTube and Twitch, so give us a subscribe and stay with us. Get in touch with us on Twitter. We're responsive.
Yep.
And we're, this whole podcast was born out of a desire to talk about the games quickly after they happen with people who really care about it. So, feel free to engage with us and let's see how we can keep the conversation moving.
Yeah. If you're looking for the exact same thing we were, consider this your opportunity to get your thoughts and opinions out. If who knows, maybe we'll have to introduce like a listener question or comments section if we start getting some of those in.
Get that chat popping, baby.
Gas us up.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us again. And we will look forward to talking to you all next week with the hoodie review.
Oh, snap.
The hoodie review.
Have a good week, everybody.
Good week. Go 100.
See you.